moving ahead to our next panel discussion, we delve into the public-private relationships into K-12 education, examining successful collaboration for infrastructure and innovation. So I welcome our esteemed panelists on stage. So our first panelist for the panel discussion would be Dr. Ashish Kumar Mittal. He is Vice Principal, Indirapuram Public School. Welcoming our second panelist, Mr. Sudhir Kukreja, co-founder and CEO at Kidzonia International. Followed by our third panelist, Ms. Arushi Singh, TY Registrar, Singhania University. I welcome you all at the stage. So this session will explore how strategic partnerships can drive improvements in educational resources and outcomes. So let's welcome our panelists by a huge round of applause. And over to you, respected panelists.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, good morning, everyone. I hope it's a little bit more refreshing after the coffee. So to start with, first of all, thank you, EdTalk team, for this honor and pleasure. Truly a delight hosting this panel with my co-hosts. Thank you so much, Dr. Mittal and Ms. Arushi. I'll start with a quick brief on who I am and what do I do. My name is Sudhir Kukreja. I happen to be the co-founder and director of Kidzonia International Schools and Kukreja International Schools. We are headquartered in Mumbai, operate around 45 branches across Bombay, Pune, Hyderabad and Indore. Doing a lot of work in the education space. Along with that, some bit of government part of the job. And I would request now my co-panelists also to quickly have a brief about them. Let me correct, it's Dr. Mittal, principal in the school. That's the right thing which has been there. So over to you, sir.
Thank you. I am Dr. Ashish Mittal. I am the principal at Indirapuram Public School, Indirapuram branch. So I think I'm excited to share a few nuggets about how we can partner between the public spaces and the private spaces, that is particularly the educational organizations. So I think let's see how our moderator takes on the session. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, I'm Arushi. I'm currently working as the Deputy Registrar at Singhania University. Over the years, I have had the opportunity to work in K-12 school education as well as higher education. So I worked with institutions like Ashoka University, Delhi Skill and Entrepreneurship University, Delhi Government Schools, the Education Alliance. And during my time at the Education Alliance, as we call it TA, I have had the opportunity to work on a PPP model. And I'm really happy to share more about it during the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And let me quickly, first set the context right for what exactly we are here for. So two new things happening for me today. One, this is probably the smallest panel that I've ever moderated. Yeah. And secondly, a topic which is probably a lot unexplored, because when we talk about private education or private partnership in K-12 space, very broadly, we really don't have a national example to look up to, right? This still remains a space which is widely unexplored. We really don't have a pan-India-wide example where we could really say that, all right, this is one successful model which can be replicated across the country and can make a significant difference. Does it have the potential? The answer obviously is yes, because the private enterprise has a huge value to add in this space. But at the same time, the moment we talk about private schools, the moment we talk about private enterprises in education, they're always looked at, from a little skeptical perspective. There is always a concern around the profiteering. There is always a concern around the monitoring, the quality aspect of it. And therefore, there are too many ifs and buts around this. And that is the reason maybe I see this topic to be something which can probably be a little challenging for the panel right here. But we'll hope we do justice to it. So I think start with Dr. Mittal. I'd like to have your initial thoughts. How do you look at this overall, proposition of having private enterprise in the K-12 space, given the fact that in the Indian history of 75 years of our existence since independence, we've always had, schools running under trust or society, non-profit. And the moment you talk about a private enterprise coming in, the first thing that comes into the mind is where's the profit and why is the profit? Yeah.
Thank you. I may mislead your flow of the panel, but let me tell you very important thing, because in the conferences we all are coming to listen to the people, and very flowery languages and very good things are being talked about. But in actual, what we are doing in these schools, whether it is a government school or in a private school, that is rather more important to discuss what we are doing and what is actually being done in these schools, or by the education fraternity, or by the government, or by the agencies like CBSE or CSC or any state board. I think it is really important, because if you talk about the partnership, I don't just talk about the partnership between the public and private sectors, rather I talk about the private partnerships between the government sectors and between the private sectors as well. Because it is important to understand our role as an educator in this fraternity, because this fraternity is being looked into like a corporate nowadays. But let me tell you, because this fraternity can never be seen as a corporate, because if you look at the situation, because we are delivering the education, or we are delivering what the society needs for the future, we are creating the future leaders. So I think our role as an educator or as a teacher is totally different, and especially as a school leader, our role is really vital. What vision we take on behalf of the management or on behalf of the educators, that really matters. If I talk about the partnerships, why it is really important, because the partnership is not just in terms of the infrastructure. I think the partnership can take place in terms of lot many things. Maybe the partnership between the government schools or between the private schools, maybe about training the teachers, maybe sharing our resources, maybe sharing our, so when I say the resources, it doesn't mean just that the materialistic sharing. It could be maybe the sharing sometimes between the teachers as well. If I have some good teachers in my school, why can't I send those teachers for a few days maybe to the different schools? However, there are different barriers practically. I understand as a leader that the management will never allow why my teacher should go to the other school. If I am paying so high to these teachers, why should other schools be benefited out of it? So there are multiple barriers, I completely understand, but still that is really important, why partnership is important. If I give you an example of CBSE, many years ago initiated a very wonderful initiative, that is the Hubs of Learning. And what was the objective of that particular initiative, Hubs of Learning? To share our resources between the schools. And that particular hub has 5 different schools, and one school was the lead collaborator that has to just behave like a leader between all those 5 schools. But let me tell you about my real story, because my school is a lead collaborator and I am a lead collaborator as a school leader, and there are other 4 schools, and all 4 schools were given to me in kind of from the semi-urban areas or semi-rural areas, whatever you may call it. Hardly out of 5 or 7 meetings that we actually tried to preside over, hardly very few schools, not very few schools, maybe 1 or 2 schools turned up, despite many requests on email, on call. But I do not know why such schools are not taking such initiatives, so in a manner where they will also learn and we will also learn from them. And I think this partnership can take place in a better manner in shaping the young minds in the future. So this is a practical example what CBSE initiated, but after some time that is also an irony in the country, in India specifically, that once any initiative is initiated by any body means maybe the CBSE, maybe the government of India, maybe any state government or whatsoever. After some times when people forget about that what was initiated 2 years ago, 3 years ago, the follow-up is a very challenging job. Hardly any agencies are taking the follow-up of on any initiative which they initiated 2 or 3 years ago, whether it is being done or not. So hubs of learning is a very beautiful example between the government schools and the private schools. That is hardly being run in these schools. Rather, few schools have forgotten what it was. So I'll share with you a few more snippets about the partnership programs. So I would request my co-panelist or moderator as well to please talk about it.
Ms. Ayushi, your initial remarks before I come back to Dr. Mittal and delve with.
So I completely agree with what you said about PPP being need of the hour, but not being explored enough. However, in the last 2 years, I have personally witnessed a lot of government taking up actively involving CSR private entities to collaborate to adopt schools in partnership with civil society. For an example, the project I did with the Education Alliance, we did it with the Education Department of Uttarakhand. We were given 2 schools in a very remote rural location in Thangar. It's 3 hours from Dehradun. We partnered with a CSR entity and 2 more NGOs to run these 2 schools. And I say it with great pleasure and happiness that the project turned out to be successful because schools from the neighboring villages reached out to us saying, why don't you adopt us as well? In the initial phases of the project, there was a lot of resistance, like you were just mentioning, sir. Schools, the principals, the teachers are not open to this idea of change. It's not really a question on anybody's capacity or ability. It is about actually taking active initiatives to become world class. And for that, if you have to partner with a private or a public entity, there's no harm, there's no shame. In fact, it's a very good and a very beautiful collaboration because it gives you a co-ownership. The people in our project in Thangar, it was not just the school and the private body or the NGOs. The local panchayat also participated, right? So there was this sense of accountability that they were holding us to. The panchayat, the locals of the region were holding us, the private entities or the civil body entities. They were holding us accountable for what are we doing, what are we delivering, if it is actually even working. So there is a lot of scope definitely, and we can discuss it ahead.
So thank you both of you. And you know what I'm going to do now is to pick up from everything that you've just briefed and try and build on this entire thing. So I'm quite, in lines with what Mr. Mittal suggested, that yes, there are challenges, there is a resistance, there is a lot of insecurity maybe, there is a lot of demotivation, or maybe there's a lack of motivation to probably come and explore those avenues. And at the same time, you probably have a ray of hope where, there are 2 schools who've probably been really excited about something coming new and then picking up. So I would want you to build it up further before I come to more constraints. This is a model that you have where 2 schools have worked for you, right? But we're talking about 2 schools. How do you see to institutionalize this, to scale this up? Let's maybe look at it in 2 ways. If you have to scale this from 2 schools to 200 schools, or maybe if you want me to break it in 3 pieces, from 2 to 20, 20 to 200, and then from 200 to 2000 schools. What is the roadmap do you think will happen? From a private perspective, resources, need, motivation, people, manpower, everything, and from a government perspective. So this is one CSR activity that happened and might have funded, the 2 school transformation and the motivation at the panchayat level and wherever. How do you see this from 20 to 200 to 2000?
So thank you for acknowledging that there is a ray of hope, right? When we started the project, the idea was to build a scalable project, right? So the Education Alliance has built a very beautiful framework they call Minimum Standard Quality Framework, MSQF, okay? What the framework tells you is to take into account that you cannot treat all schools equally. You have to consider the equity factor into it. All schools in different regions have different issues, different problems that you need to address in a very unique way. And the MQSF framework enables you to do that. For an example, the schools in Delhi have very different problems, and the schools in Thangar or a rural location have very different issues. We are focusing now on the quality of education, teacher training, while the schools in Thangar are still stuck, or Thangar or alike, are still stuck on the very bare minimum requirement of having teachers in the school, students coming to classes, having a operational functional toilet, providing quality nutritious midday meal, the very bare minimum requirements. So to evolve from that, first you have to ensure that they are at a for them to become equivalent to a city space. That is not, you cannot copy paste the same model is what I'm saying. You will have to.
And that's the reason I asked you, how do you institutionalize it from a
Yes.
20 to 2000 schools?
So, which is where the frameworks like minimum quality standard framework come into picture, because they are not talking about doing the same ABCD step-by-step format or formula, applying it to all places. You have to go there, you have to partner with the local agencies, local private bodies, you have to engage with the panchayats or the MLAs or the local leaders, and that is the only way to make this work. Is this scalable? 100%. All we really need from the government is policy support in encouraging these private bodies to partner. Why should they? What
Why
is
would
it,
a private enterprise do this?
I mean, other than CSR? I mean, one thing is, out of CSR, somebody is working in education, they might want to do it. But why not others? Why can't every private body work? Where is the encouragement from the government? So the government has to work on some sort of incentivization. Other than that, I have seen in Delhi, for example, if you are all from Delhi, you would know Delhi government institutionalized SMCs into all schools. It's school management committees. Now, school management committees are not PPP, but they are about co-owning and partnership. So, school management committees include parents, teachers, school management itself, a local leader body, or a NGO, right? So, they make this committee to ensure that there is co-ownership, there's accountability, and there's input and opinions from all different stakeholders, right? That is something that started from one school, scaled it up to all the 2000 schools in Delhi.
Dr. Mittal, your thoughts? What are the challenges you see in this approach? Is there actually an institutionalization possible? And what could be that bare minimum, thing that we are planning to propose, and how do you execute that?
Thank you. Actually, I am always tempted to share the real stories, what I always experience or feel or see in the world, instead of just talking about the language, what NEP or NCF also talks about. I give an example of Parak survey. अगर आप लोगों ने किसी ने पीछे देखा होगा तो I was the observer in Parak survey that was earlier the National Achievement Survey. Now they called it a Parak survey. I was the observer for grade 3. That particular school was to be observed for grade 3 children. I was shocked when actually I looked at the question paper. I did not really understand what the government is going to analyze out of this data. Believe me, people, for just 2 to 3 hours, total 2 to 3 hours, there were in totality at least 160 to 170 questions that to be answered by grade 3 children. Is it humanly possible for them? For grade 3 children. And those grade 3 children were from all different areas when I say, they were from public sector as well, the government schools and the private schools. And fortunately, I was placed to be an observer in the government school of Uttar Pradesh. That was a primary school. And that school, the total area of that school was, I think, the 1/3 of this hall. The total area of the school was the 1/3 of this hall. And 5 classes were running from grade 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And grade 3 children were to be observed by Parak survey. And believe me, the children had to answer 160 to 170 questions in all. However, the government will always claim, or the question, I am scared a bit because it is being recorded here, but still I dare to speak the truth. Because in totality, the government can claim that there were just 45 questions and these many questions, but what about the subparts? Will the child not read all the subparts? There were a lot of subparts in each question, and total 150, 160, 170 around questions were to be answered in just 2 or 3 hours. This is not possible at all by grade 3 children, and especially the kids who are studying in such a government school where I do not know whether what kind of a teaching is happening in that school, where the students themselves have to clean the washrooms always, or the washrooms are not hygienic, and there are a lot of issues. The teachers are not there, or the dummy teachers are there, because the real teachers are actually paying 10,000 per month to the dummy teacher, and they're just taking a 50, 60,000 left out salary to their account. So this is what is happening in the government sector as well. I am not claiming that it is everywhere, but I am telling you the story what I experienced personally. And now I go ahead. When we talk about the partnership, how it will go ahead, because the government always gives very beautiful schemes where we look at the scheme that this scheme particularly is going to benefit the public and private partnerships. There are a lot of schemes. But practically on ground, how many schemes are really possible and practical, that also need to be understood by each one of us sitting here. Because we are sitting in a conference which is being organized by a lot of EdTech people. Right. And how many EdTech companies are actually approaching government schools? Except the government bodies. How many EdTech companies are going to those private schools which really do not afford the kind of finance it actually needs for taking it over for their school particularly? So this is all about our understanding that how much we are talking on ground or practically possible. If I talk about next thing, because if I was talking about the Parak survey was to see where our country is going in terms of the education. Everybody knows about the PISA's result. And after that, the PISA was also about to conducted in India, but India did not participate again. Why? Because we realized कि दोबारा करने की अभी कोशिश नहीं करते हैं. Let's do the internal survey first, and then we will go to PISA's survey. So there are a lot of things. If I talk about the partnership, the first panel was talking about the inclusion. I really enjoyed that particular panel. Why? We talk about embracing the kids who really need the special education. How many schools are there in India who are embracing this challenge? Who are really taking all these kids in their schools? Believe me, people, parents of such children are in huge dilemma that what is going to take place in the future. Because most schools who talk so high about that we do this, we do that, but they do not take such admissions in their schools. Very few schools are there who are really embracing. And let me tell you very proudly that my school has a science center, and the moderator of the first panel was also not moderating, she was one of the panelists in my school when we organized a launching Science Centers conference, and she was one of the panelists, and she has herself seen what we are trying to actually do for all special kids in our school. My school particularly has around 35 or 40 special students in my school, and good team with occupational therapists and things like that. I'm not going to talk about the inclusion. I'm just trying to tell you the partnership cannot just take place about with the infrastructure, with the innovation. The topic is particularly focusing on that, but my vision is beyond that. Partnership is not actually dependent on infrastructure and things like that. Why my special educator cannot go to other schools and actually identify what all requirements are there in that school where they cannot afford a special educator. However, according to the CBSE, there is a mandate that you should have the special educator. But all the schools, I think it's a kind of a formality that they are doing, putting up them. So there are a lot of things. I think I am derailing the question, but still what I really wanted to highlight here, because the partnership can actually be thought of when we are looking at all aspects which are really to be worked for initially, and when we see that these problems are sorted out at ground level, I think the partnership can take on that particular flight in the future.
Okay, so Dr. Mittal, I'm going to come back to you with a little bit of a counter argument. Yeah, and trying to bring us back to the topic. For a reason, unfortunately, I think we are two people who are sitting on the opposite side of the table, right? And why I say opposite side of the table is because you are running a school in the capacity of a principal, and I'm running a chain of schools in the capacity of a school owner. Yeah. So when you ask why a special educator cannot go to a government school and do the job, very bluntly and very honestly, my answer to that is because I am paying for that special educator, right? I might do a little bit of a CSR. I might do a little bit of a charity, which is possible. Like ma'am said, she's done for 2 schools, possible. She represents a good group which has a very noble intention, so they did for 2 schools. And that is the reason since the start of this discussion, I focused on institutionalizing this process, right? We are a country with almost 28 crore students. And if I'm not wrong, I don't have the absolute data, but broadly as I know and remember having heard here and there, we are not even 10 to 15% private contribution in this. So if we are expecting the 10 to 15% private educational entrepreneurs to shoulder the burden of 100% government enterprise, that cannot be CSR, right? Everything said and done, everything we might speak, ethically, philosophically, and whatever said, anything and everything that needs to be done needs funding. That's the bottom line. Yeah. So from a policy perspective, it's very easy to say that, all right, let's do this. But then the moment it comes to executing, whichever special educator we are talking about, whichever school institution that we're talking about, he or she needs to deploy funds, because at the end of the day, we all are human beings, we have family to feed. Yeah, that special educator also has a family to feed. You have a family to feed, I have a family to feed, right? If I, and the person who's probably investing in a private enterprise, he also has an investor to answer, the investors also have families to feed. And that is the reason it will always boil down to that, and this is probably the most scariest part, which I am very audaciously putting it on a camera, that let's stop talking philosophy. It's very important to talk practical. Can we expect 10% of the private enterprise to fund the education of 28 crore people across this country? We cannot. That's the blunt answer, right? So if that is going to happen, we need to talk about the practicalities of it. And when I actually accepted this invitation to moderate this session, I knew this is going to come up. And do I need to have the guts to sit here and talk about this? Probably yes, because this is the reality which we really don't want to run away from. Yeah. If I mean, think about it. You might be heading a school with 50, 70, 80, 100, 200 teachers. That's the max. I mean, the highest capacity of a school that you'll probably imagine in India would be an average 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. That's it, not beyond that. Now, why will a private enterprise go ahead and hire 10 extra teachers and send them to government school on a daily basis? Doing a charity, one institution, one workshop, the CBSE model that you talked about, that's also there. And at the heart of everything that, even when you talk about the hubs of learning, etc., why the other schools are not contributing also has a monetary angle behind it. I mean, I'll tell you a sad reality. In a city of Aurangabad, when I started a school, this is about 10 years ago, and I don't mind saying this, there was one educational cluster officer, I don't know what is the exact designation, but he was a guy managing almost 200, 300 government schools in that region. And he happened to visit my school for an inspection on a day when I was conducting a teacher training program. So he just happened to be around. I invited him as a guest, etc. At the end of the program, he says, Mr. Sudhir, why don't you come in and do a program for our teachers? I said, I would love to if I can contribute, and one-off, by the way, not every month. Yeah. So I said, one-off events, if you want me to come in and do a teacher training program, I would definitely love to do. I went there. He had organized a nice hall and something. With all, I told him I'll have a PT, so I need a projector, etc., etc. I arranged everything. You won't believe what happened, and that was the last time I walked into a government setup to do this kind of a CSR or charity. While there were 200 teachers invited, there were only 30 sitting in the hall. And it's not that the other 170 were not there. The other 170 were there on that premises, but not in the training hall. Some of them were engaged in co-curricular activities, some of them were engaged in something else. And when I finally asked somebody as to, okay, why do we have this thing? You know what was the reply? The reply right in my face was, sir, you're being paid for your training. We are being paid for attending this. Let's do our jobs. That's the level that we're talking about. And that is the reason I think we need to really have a very serious thought to how do we, because that is the need. And I will again come back to that, we need to institutionalize this. How do we, and when I say institutionalize this, I'm sorry to come back to it, but we'll have to run away from this charity concept and talk about business. Not to make profits, but to bring in that professionalism in the entire approach that all right, private enterprise is welcome, which means private money is welcome. And when you talk about private money, the return has to be there on that. And that is what the government needs to commit. So I'll take a classic example of, I'll be honest, when I was given this topic, I was absolutely clueless. How many public-private partnerships do we have in this country which are a successful model? I did a chat GPT and I got 4 examples. Yeah, so there is one which is talked about globally, which was Delhi government. There is one which is done in Andhra Pradesh. There's one which is done in Guwahati, and there's one which is done in parts of Rajasthan. Now, when I looked at this entire data, it tells me that government has partnered with private enterprises while committing them returns on the market rates. You can get the best of the special educators, you can get the best of the trainers, you can get best of the teachers to come into the enterprise and do the job as long as you're meeting their market rates. If I am paid 1,000 rupees an hour, I will not come in for 400 rupees an hour. That's very simple. So if the Delhi government went ahead and did that, all right, this is what needs to be done, that is getting respected. And that's what we'll have to do, because at the end of the day, it's a human conscience. Why will I invest my time? I mean, when I went for 4 elements of business, 4 elements of labor. So labor is a very important aspect of it. So we are talking about a service industry, and therefore when we're talking about anybody coming in and giving their expertise, time, energy, money, for that there has to be a proper compensation. And it's time we moved away from that CSR. And that is the reason I asked you, how do you institutionalize it? We'll have to respect the fact that, all right, even a teacher is a private individual entrepreneur. We are a country where we pay peanuts to the teachers. I saw a video very widely circulating on Instagram that teachers are being exploited. That's the truth. What is the harm if a teacher wishes to move around in a Mercedes? Why can't we do that? How many teachers move around in a Mercedes in this country? And where will the money from the Mercedes come from? It's very easy to question the schools, the management, the teachers, but this is the harsh reality. And we will have to accept it, that we'll have to convert this into a private enterprise. Your thoughts on it?
Thank you. I think it was not a counter statement. I think you supported my statements, because I never mentioned that. Just an example, why should my special educator not go to other school? It was in the context of why should my special educator not go to other schools and train their special educators in case we feel that they are not trained enough or not doing a right job, or kind of a collaboration why we can't have. Or maybe sometimes what happens, because we just see a one-sided story. Why this collaboration should not be seen as a real collaboration where my teacher will also learn from them?
Because that's not being paid for it.
See,
your teacher is not being paid for going and doing that. That's the problem.
I don't agree with you, honestly speaking, because I think we are talking again very, very business kind of talking here.
It's not business. I'm sorry, I'm cutting you short, sir. It's not business. If you are not paid for it, will you go and work for 5 schools?
I am already doing.
Full time?
That is what I'm mentioning, sir. This is not about full time. I never mentioned that EdTech companies should go and do a charity and give their products on free of cost. And that is what I mentioned, that when I visited that government school, I found, honestly speaking, that I will speak to my management and do a charity for this school so that they will also have a very good infrastructure. But at the same time, the second thought came to my mind, this is a government school, and government already has enough fund where they can invest in and create a good infrastructure and provide all resources what any school really requires. honestly speaking. So I did not speak to my management. That is where my point comes in, that I am not talking about the charity at all, but I'm talking about the collaboration. If you think that it is a business, or it is not a business, that my teacher is not being paid. If I give you an example of myself, I am the regional mentor of change for Niti Aayog. I am a mentor of different ATLs or different mentors. This is completely a volunteership program. I'm not being paid even a single penny from the Niti Aayog, but still I'm doing this job for last, I think, 8 years with Niti Aayog. So this is just an example, but there are a lot of teachers from my school also who are doing this as per you, the charity, for other schools as well, where I do not find it as a charity, I find always as a collaboration. And that is where the role comes in of an educator to empower others as well. We have kind of adopted two different schools, and my school also has a place for the evening classes where the underprivileged students are coming to my school, and my teachers are teaching them on free of cost and providing them all resources. So this is something else. But second thing, we have adopted few schools where my teachers are going from time to time, my students are also going from time to that school to teach their kids, to provide them the resources and things like that. So there are several examples. So let's not talk about how many private schools are there, how many government schools are there. I think we can never institutionalize or channelize this ever if we, as an individual or as a school, as a single school, we don't initiate it to partner with other schools. So that is what I practically think about it.
Well, I think I'm glad you have a perspective on that as an educator, which is absolutely welcome. The only point of contention I think that we have is the fact that our topic of discussion is how do you bring about private partnership. While I agree with you that in an individual capacity, an educator or a principal or a school management can do it, I still stand with that perspective that when you need to talk about the entire country, when you need to talk about the entire scale, that CSR would not be enough to maybe meet the requirements of the country. With this, I think I come to you, ma'am. Resources aside, money aside, funding aside. In terms of, let's talk about the brain capital, the intellectual capital. There are, I think, thousands of edtech companies which have now come into the space. And like sir very rightly said, maybe there is a little lack of, the motivation, maybe the appreciation for the modern technology and the adaptation and the need for the adaptation for it. Yeah. Assuming that we have all the resources, by my way or his way, that's a different story. But assuming that we have it, where do you see this, technological advancement making a difference in the, the educational space or the intellectual cognitive space, that all right, here is what has got the development, whether it is in terms of AI, whether it is in terms of, the modern robotics, or, a lot of initiatives by the government in terms of, various labs, etc., Atal labs and all that we're setting up. How do you bring about this transformation on a national scale by the means of public-private partnership? Can this be a model where the private schools adapt a couple of schools around, or do we need a government intervention, or do we actually get into the private mode where it probably is allowed to make profits and then do it? All three boxes open, and maybe what we could probably look at it.
I go back to the two schools.
Yeah.
Those were two schools in the beginning. There are 4 schools now. And at the end of the first year of those 2 schools, the Chief Minister of Uttarakhand, Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, Education Ministers of both states, and the education directors from both regions, and a lot of bureaucrats visited the 2 schools. They acknowledged the work done there, and they are working with the NGO that I was formerly working with to institutionalize this PPP model and expand it to the both states, right? So it is good to see that institutionalization is possible and is being recognized by the states as well. We cannot talk about institutionalizing it at one time for the entire country. We are a huge nation with very different geographical, cultural requirements and needs. So we'll have to do it brick by brick, one by one. But coming back to your question, see, I completely agree that it is not possible to send good quality or teachers of all sorts, special needs or different expert areas to all schools, because we have limitations in terms of monetary limitations, geographical limitations, cultural limitations, language limitations. But with the help of these edtech companies, for an example, in the same two schools, FLN sir mentioned, right? FLN is a key factor that the entire country is working on right now. From Jammu and Kashmir to Kanyakumari, everybody has acknowledged that, you know, we are way behind in that. The students need real effort. Now for FLN also, you need special teachers. And it is because it was with the help of these edtech companies, we were able to enable and practice or teach FLN to the students in Thangar, while the team and the teachers were sitting in Gurgaon. They were teaching the students in Thangar, which is what, 7-8 hours drive from here, and they were doing it well. They did it well. The students performed the pre-assessment, the post-assessment results were fabulous. Madhya Pradesh has a great, Madhya Pradesh, the entire state is a great example of how they have taken help of these private bodies, tech companies, in institutionalizing FLN teaching. So it's not a PPP model, but I'm talking about the fact that, you know, private body came in, worked with the government, tech companies came together, worked with the government, worked with the schools, and they made a possible measurable difference. The learning outcomes are measurable. You can look at the example of Madhya Pradesh, Punjab, Gujarat. All these states have proven to do fabulous work.
I just wanted to mention one more thing, because I talked about the government schools. I am a CBSE trainer as well. It is not just about the government schools. There are just very few private schools who are actually going on the same vision what Government of India has in NEP. Let me tell you very honestly, because when I visit the private schools as well, I find them sometimes worse than government schools. In terms of what? Not in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the less learning outcomes. Their understanding about learning outcomes, what they are going to plan. My first panel also talked about that their teachers are actually working on the learning outcomes, curricular goals very religiously or very judiciously in the beginning of the session. But let me tell you the story of the private sectors as well. So that is why I'm not talking about the further institutionalization. I'm talking about the ground reality that is there in the private schools as well. There are many private schools in the entire country which also need the overhauling of the entire system. Let me tell you, because they do not even understand what is NEP and what is the vision of NEP, what is NCF. NCF तो बहुत दूर की बात है. They do not even understand the NEP. NEP is a very छोटा document, the NCF is a very big बड़ा document. But if you do not understand the vision of NEP, I think you can never understand what is NCF. So this is a small thing, that partnership, why I am emphasizing on the partnership or kind of adopting few more schools, so that I think if I know something, why should I not be able to tell the same things to more schools? So this is what I think after some time as an educator I see that particular this country will surely grow in the education. And especially the sad part is that the government of India does not actually invest in the education fraternity as compared to previous years or in the past. It is increasing, but it is not sufficient what is really required for any education system, for any education in the country to actually survive in the future. So this is what I really wanted to mention. So thank you so much for that opportunity.
Thank you so much. I think we're just running out of time. So before I conclude, a big thank you to both of you. I guess as a panel, we've been able to come across different perspectives. I believe that's my job. I'm sorry if I've been a little this thing. But I've always believed that, you know, a discussion needs to have a lot of counter perspectives. I don't know whether I was right or he was right, but yeah, it's a perspective. And as an educationist, I think I need to be open to both. And I definitely agree with the idea that there is a huge scope and need for collaboration. But at the same time, I think I stand my point that it needs to be institutionalized. That I thought, which was my perspective to the entire thing. Because, it's the country that we're talking about. It's the topic that I was probably given was to look at the overall national perspective. And I definitely agree with ma'am when she said we are a country with a huge diversity and there cannot be one solution fit all, but we definitely need multiple solutions. And that is where I guess would be.
Because nobody is right or wrong here, it is all about the perspective. Actually, if we are finding time to sit here in the conference to attend such conferences, can we not find some time to go to more schools and empower them in multiple areas, not infrastructurally, maybe with our knowledge, with our wisdom? I think we all can do it. If everybody can sit here and find time, or 6 hours or 8 hours, running from your school to here or your institutions from there to here and going back, I think we can find time to go to other schools or in our vicinity where they really require to get empowered in a lot of areas. I think we all can contribute, and this is my urge to each one of you. I'm sure most of you are already doing, but if you're not doing, please start doing it. Even with a small school where they will feel empowered कि बड़े बड़े स्कूलों के लोग मेरे पास आके मुझे सिखाते हैं. Actually, it works. बच्चा also feel glad कि मुझे अच्छे लोग आके सिखा रहे हैं. बच्चों को आप गोद लीजिए, गोद in the sense कुछ स्कूल को अडॉप्ट करिए, उसको थोड़ा थोड़ा भी आप देंगे. मुझे नहीं लगता कोई मैनेजमेंट आपको ये कहेगा आफ्टर सम टाइम कि आपको मैंने हायर किया है, पे मैं करता हूं, लेकिन दूसरे बच्चों को फायदा मिल रहा है. दे विल नेवर से, अनलेस दे आर नॉट एजुकेशनिस्ट at all. So thank you so much.
Dr. Mittal, the problem is not that we are saying that we should not go. The problem is you going to a school for one day or me going to a school for one day will not solve the problem. We need the full-time engagement there to bring about a transformation. Nobody is saying we should not. I'm sure everybody sitting in this hall is an educationist, definitely is doing that, but that is not enough. And that's the discussion.
Yes, I agree.
How do we make it, how do we make a ecosystem where people like you, me, and all of us, I'm sorry to say, most of us sitting in this hall probably represent the elite part of the education system. We've still not gone to the last sem. So we can talk about going there for one day, but that one day will not transform India. They need us for 31 days in a month.
We will do for more
365
days.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, dear panelists. Well, I request our panelists to just stay for a quiet moment for a few more minutes as we open the floor for the Q&A session, just for a few minutes.
I would just like to say that, as all of you said, that there should be more collaboration, no doubt about that. But one impression that is, I'm not saying, but it is prevalent, that private is better than government. That should not be there. Just to say that when we enter the government service, because I'm talking of Delhi only because I am here, and like every other state, there is a high competitive exam, then we get through it. Like when I became a deputy director, I had to clear all the UPSC written test interview. It was all India competition, and all three of us sitting here, we have worked for NCERT. We have written NCERT textbooks. We were all teacher trainers. So it is just to say that there should be some. I would just give you example of my own district, but it's a story 4 or 5 years back, since I retired in 22. In one more collaboration happened was that public school students in my district used to come to my government schools. Students, I'm talking of students. They used to attend classes in the same, and similarly my government school students used to attend public school. So this is one type of collaboration which used to take place. It was a government order, government program. And nowadays, if you just have heard, Delhi government, I'm talking of Directorate of Education, since our children usually come from poor backgrounds, but they are very talented, there is no doubt about that. So government has just hired the services of physics wala, you must have heard, for preparation of these coaching exams, NEET, JEE and CUET. So private sector does enter government, there is no doubt about that. But one thing I would just because I have worked for right to education. There is a SMC in every school, even in private schools. So SMC can cooperate because they are staying in the same. And the NEP also talks about clusters, cluster-based approach, where we are usually even sharing the resources, even manpower we are sharing, like teachers and so on. Now, since there is no uh, division between streams at senior secondary, so I don't know whether that will happen. It might take 5 or 10 years more. But actually it is that, or take my example, or all three of us, we are retired persons. We can also contribute. Any area we can contribute. SMCs can contact us. We can contact SMCs. And social media is there. We are ready. I am ready to give my services pro bono. No problem about that. In any area. And since I am a practicing advocate also, right to education. And one more thing I would like to say, that our schools, teachers, even schools are not aware of the legislation. Right to education has been thrown into the dustbin. We are not aware of the quality sections. That is section 24, which deals with the duties of teachers. So all these things have to be brought to light, and there has to be, everything has to come from within. No doubt, and nowadays we have used the power of social media also to have the outlook of society should change. I have worked for RT I have worked on a handbook for RT from NCRT about this CWSN children also. So there are many government publications which have not been referred. So that's my take, that we can always collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you, our panelists. Thank you, sir. I request our panelists to just... Oh, one more question? No issues.
Yeah, hi, very good morning to all. So first of all, Dr. Ashish, Arushi ma'am and Sudhir ji, it was lovely interaction and very valuable insight shared by you. Myself, Dr. Vikas Vijay, a short introduction. Basically, I'm an author from last 30 years, writing books by the name of Together with Rachna Sagar. So I take workshops in Delhi, across the globe, abroad also. And since sir is from Indirapuram school, I suppose, so I've been to nearby schools like St. Francis, St. Thomas, Cambridge. So in my workshop, I usually ask one question: why it is so? Why it is so that in our classroom we have variety of students like 40%, 70%, 90%? What is the reason? When we teach the students in a uniform manner, with the same worksheet, same teaching pedagogy, then why it is so we have different result in the school? The answer I get because of the understanding, the different pattern of understanding. But if we take the same students to watch a movie, if we make these students sit in a picture hall with the 40%, 70%, 90%, there the student who's getting 40% is able to understand the movie in a much better way as compared to a 90% child. There, 40% wala is competing with the 90% able to understand the movie. But when the same child moves to the classroom, he again becomes a 40% wala bacha. Now, the question is, what was the difference in the picture hall or in the classroom?
It is absolutely about or dependent on the pedagogical practices. Panel 1 also talked about the learning outcomes, and I deeply believe in the practice. Whatever planning you do as an educator in the beginning of the session, that impacts the whole year. And I truly believe in, because in my own school, we give approximately 2 to 3 months to create the curriculum for the next year, keeping in mind what NEP says, what NCF says, and accordingly, what we are going to achieve, what we have learned from our mistakes from the last year. And that is why we give 2 to 3 months to create the designed curriculum depending on our experiences and depending on what is the need of the classroom, that all depends on that. Using different tools, using different activities, using different ideas. So that is where I think the role comes in for every educator, not just think about as a teacher going to the classroom, teaching and coming back. Our role is actually beyond that. Our role is to make sure that every child of the classroom is learning. A learning could be different, but they should learn. And what is the pedagogical practice, what I am using, I should always reflect upon, introspect upon, and modulate and modify according to the need. So I cannot say that if I am teaching grade 6A, so that the same pedagogy or within the same class, the pedagogy can be same with the section B as well. So there are a lot of things which every educator needs to understand and tweak or modify the lesson planning, which creates a vital role in the classroom. So I think this is all about the curriculum designing that happens in the beginning of the session.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, friends. It was great listening to the esteemed members of the panel. My own perception and many more similarly might be, we are teachers. And a teacher does not see a government school or a private school. Just as you say, my dear friends, that children are unique, every child learns in a different manner. So also as teachers, I can, and I have been in my 4 decades of teaching, both learning, principle, and many more. There's nothing which has bound us as private teachers or government school teacher. मैं तो teacher हूँ. मेरा connect है बच्चे के साथ. And if as teachers, you can make an impact, and if few of us can also make an impact, I think the success story is made. So it's not, my dear friends, about what private schools do and what public schools do. If as a human being and as a teacher, as an educator, मुझे अपनी जिम्मेदारियां पता है, मुझे कोई परवाह नहीं पड़ती, whether you put me in a public sector or you put me in a private, because I've worked through in both. So I would say, at the core of everything, it is the teacher which makes a difference. It's not the management. I am also on the board of governors of Gurukul, the school. But the real person is the teacher in the classroom and the taught. And that says it all. Thank you.
Completely agree with you, ma'am, because I think the change starts from me. So why should I not think like that, that if I make any change in the maybe for the cause of a betterment of the society, I think I should start without giving a second thought, what will this country or what will this community think about me. I think as an educator, what is my duty, if I understand it well, I think it will make a huge impact in the society after some time. Thank you so much.
I do wish that this discussion would have gone far further, but since time is of the essence, so I request our honorable panelists to set up for a photograph.